So, this one completely caught me off guard, because earlier in the week we saw a post made from moneypuck.com on Twitter talking about defensive pairs in the National Hockey League with the lowest expected goals against per 60 minutes. Minimum 200 minutes played together at 5-on-5. Now, expected goals against per 60 minutes is quite the telling stat, but just in case it doesn't really translate because, big stats, big long words, kind of takes a while to process, it pretty much means, based off of the analytical data previously, how many goals we can expect this defensive pairing to give up for every 60 minutes of ice time they play. So pretty much you want a low number, because a lower number means that your pairing is a lot more defensively sound than others, or at least that's what the expectation is based off of the previous stuff. And so this grid right here goes over different pairings in the league, and you can see the expected goals against per 60 minutes category. And the teams at the end, you have Edmonton Petrie, one of the better pairings over here, Brodin Dumba, Edler Schmidt from Vancouver, oddly enough. Then you have, going up the list, Yossi Ellis, Ekblad Uyghur, Leddy Mayfield, Hanifin Tanev, so that one kind of stings Vancouver Canucks fans. But literally the best pairing in the league in this statistical category is the Detroit Red Wings' Marc Staal and Troy Stecher with a 1.55 expected goals against per 60 minutes, which is the best one on this chart. Oh my gosh. Marc Staal and Troy Stecher, even though they're not really out there getting goals per se, you can see their expected goals for number. It's one of the lowest on the chart, but hey, that's not really a big deal. The Red Wings in general don't really score too many goals, so I think that's a lot of a reflection of the team that they play for instead of them as a pairing. But Marc Staal and Troy Stecher are out here as legitimately the best defensive defenseman pairing in the entire NHL. Better than Lindgren and Fox, Hanifin Tanev, Pelech Pulock, which is crazy because the Islanders actually have two pairings on here. Barry Trotz's defensive system really working out for them, I guess. But it speaks volumes to me that the Red Wings, the team that is probably one of the worst in the Central, one of the worst in the league, that has given up a whole bunch of goals and not really scoring all too many themselves, have the best expected goals against per 60 minutes pairing in Staal and Troy Stecher. You can see the other stats here on the actual list as well. Expected goals against, they've got the lowest number as well. This stat doesn't take into account the actual minutes played, which is why Hanifin Tanev, for example, who give up a lot more goals, they have one of the higher numbers, but because they have a significantly higher amount of minutes than the majority of these other defenseman pairings, it puts their per 60 minute number at a much higher rate. So it's kind of funny to see how these things work out, because both of these guys were legitimately pickups by the Red Wings in the offseason. Troy Stecher via free agency, Marc Staal via trade. Marc Stahl's in a position where he's trade bait. He will most likely be traded, I would think, by Steve Yzerman for a draft pick. But Staal does have some form of control over where he goes because he does have that no-move protection. He's in the final year of his $5.7 million AAV deal, so he's pretty much just a cut-and-paste kind of rental player. You trade this guy away for some picks or whatever, he's a free agent, who knows what happens afterwards. So, for the Red Wings, they're in a spot where Marc Staal, whom they did acquire with a draft pick, remember the trade all the way back last year, it was future considerations for Marc Staal and a draft pick. They're going to be getting themselves another draft pick pretty much if they trade away this guy, which I would probably assume is going to happen because Staal would be a pretty interesting piece as a rental player. It's kind of funny because I wouldn't have guessed that the pairing of Staal-Stecher would be first in the NHL in terms of expected goals against per 60 minutes, just from the way that Red Wings fans were talking about Staal and the way he plays. I've said this a few times throughout the season, but even though the Red Wings are my third favorite team, it's tough catching their games, man. They just don't show up on TV anymore. Regional blackouts happen over here. Sure, there are indeed streaming services that would allow me to watch these games, but the fact that sometimes they overlap with my other teams, the Montreal Canadiens and the Canucks, and the fact that the Canucks and the Habs actually show here in Vancouver sometimes, it puts a lot more precedence on these teams here, especially since they're in a tight playoff race. For Detroit, it's been a lot more difficult. I definitely am not watching as much Detroit as I would want to, but the fact is, Red Wings fans would be talking about Marc Staal in the post-game threads and all the other threads going on Twitter and Reddit, saying things like, yeah, even though we have this guy, even though he's not really all too great, he's a draft pick for us, so good. I just didn't really expect this overwhelmingly positive statistic saying that him and Stecher are just so good together, that they are legitimately the best at suppressing goals against in the league. And for Troy Stecher, man, you know how much I love Troy Stecher. This is a guy whom, when he signed with the Red Wings in the offseason, my initial thought process was, this guy is going to be playing probably the most important role he's ever played in his career. At the very least, since his North Dakota days, because Troy Stecher on the Vancouver Canucks was a mid-pair, somewhat of a bottom pair kind of guy. He wasn't really relied upon as a top player, and a lot of that had to do with the size, you know? You had bigger defensemen like Tyler Myers, who were just harder to shove off the puck. You already had a small defenseman in Quinn Hughes at the top of your lineup, so you didn't want to have two small guys playing together. It was just a matter of circumstance and the fact that Troy Stecher's skill set wasn't enough to push him into a top spot with the Canucks, that even though he was a good puck facilitator, a guy who's got some good wheels, and a guy who works so hard out there on every shift, we note this every year in Vancouver, but during the first skates of the year, Stecher would always puke. It would be a year in, year out kind of story because this guy just works so hard playing for his hometown team, the team that he grew up watching. He was an undrafted NHL free agent that was good in college with his buddy Brock Besser, and he goes over to Vancouver, and it was just a perfect story for this guy, but just the way that he was played and respected in Vancouver, I was thinking to myself when he went to Detroit, he's going to get the next step. He's going to know what it's like to be one of the top guys, because for the Red Wings, let's face it, they're not really that good of a team. And their right side depth kind of could use a guy like Troy Stecher because, hey, he works really hard, he's good at facilitating play. What, as long as you're able to go out there and get the puck to Dylan Larkin every shift, you're going to be good. And Troy Stecher has been that, you know? So for the Red Wings, who are indeed still one of the worst teams in the league, statistically speaking, in terms of the wins and the losses, it's crazy to me how the best expected goals against pairing in the NHL belongs to them, and it just warms my heart to see that Troy Stecher is doing the good fight out there. I haven't seen a negative comment about Troy Stecher from any of the Red Wings fans or subreddits or media outlets that I follow, and that's a good thing, because aside from John Merrill and Philip Hronik, you have these guys, Marc Staal, Troy Stecher, Nemeth is in there as well, Danny DeKeyser, all kind of sharing similar ice time, so the distribution of these players seems pretty fair for the Red Wings, and just seeing the defensive capabilities of Stecher and Staal, that's cool. Even though one of them's probably going to be traded away, I would think, and the other you acquired in a weird little twist of fate where his first team wasn't really reaching out to him and he wasn't really treated all too right. Hey, serves the Canucks right that a really good defensively capable defender like Troy Stecher is thriving in Detroit, and serves the Canucks right that another really capable defender in Chris Tanev is flourishing so well for the Calgary Flames too. Look at this, Tanev and Stecher both as some of the top defensemen in the league on their pairings in their own circumstances over here. It's kind of funny. I mean, Edler Schmidt is also on this list too, but hey, Tanev, Stecher, there's a sentimentality that exists with these players amongst the Canucks fan base that does not exist with the other players just yet. I mean, Edler, maybe, not really kind of the same thing. So talk to me in the comments what you think about this over here, the fact that Staal and Stecher are the best statistical pairing in terms of expected goals against per 60 minutes. Is this a flawed kind of statement? Is it really just you're picking out one small little thing about it that doesn't represent their entire play Lego kind of thing? Or is this really just an indicament of how good they have been? As I said, I haven't been watching too many Detroit games, so you're going to have to let me know in the comment section below if that is true. So talk to me in the comments what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.